In this video, I'm going to be showing how to remove the center console and dash bezel in a 2003 to 2009 4th generation Toyota 4Runner in order to access the radio and other items hidden behind the dash. The first step is to make sure your center console area is clear of any unnecessary items. And then you are just going to go ahead and open the center console lid. You will see that there is this piece of trim which surrounds the shifter assembly, all these buttons, and this cubby butting up against the center console. What you're going to want to do is grasp this on both hands between your thumbs and forefingers and lift. It'll pop out just like that. In these Toyota vehicles, the interior is extremely well built, and I've had this apart dozens of times and it fits together just as tightly as it did to begin with, and I haven't broken a single clip. That being said, still take caution and be careful, especially if it's cold out, to not force anything because you don't want it to snap. You'll then want to wiggle this free and lift it clear of the shifter. All of the plugs underneath are going to have to be unplugged. You can keep track of where each one goes if you like. However, in a moment I will show you a very helpful trick. On the back of each of these switches there is a stripe showing what color plug goes into it. For example, this one gets a blue plug and this one gets a white plug. So if you forget to mark things or forget where things go, most of them should only fit in one spot, but if there's any that fit in multiple spots, you can match them up that way. With that removed, you can set it aside. Back seat is a great place for this. The next step is to simply remove the cup holder divider and set that aside. Next, we will remove this large silver piece of trim that goes around the entirety of the center console. Simply want to place your thumbs against this cubby at the back and lift, and it'll pop free. Wiggle a little to make sure it comes loose at the front without scraping anything, and set that large piece aside now. Next, you'll want to remove this small cubby underneath the climate controls. I have broken parts of this before, being not careful in its removal, so make sure you're a little gentle in its removal. I like to grab it on either side and sort of wiggle back and forth a little bit at a time until it comes free, just like that. Set that aside. Next, we will need one of the only two tools involved in this job, a large Phillips screwdriver. There is a Phillips screw underneath the defrost button. You'll want to go ahead and remove that and set it to the side. At this stage, you want to make sure your key is not in the ignition. This is removing the climate control unit. You're simply going to want to put your fingers underneath it. There's a little ridge and you can pry and it'll pop free. Yours should be one piece, but mine's actually two pieces because I've done some funky modifications. And then behind the screen, there is a single electrical connector to unplug. Set this aside. Be pretty careful with it. These units can be pretty expensive if you can't find one in a junkyard and you have to go to eBay. Next, we will need the only other tool, which is a 10mm. I'm using a socket and a Ryobi cordless tool because I'm lazy and it's easy. There are two gold colored bolts underneath the radio. You'll want to go ahead and remove those. Next, we are going to have to go ahead and get underneath the driver's side of the dash because there is one more bolt which is obscured by the large plastic panel that goes underneath the steering wheel. Again, we are just going to need the 10mm. There are two bolts to remove. One is right here to the left of the parking brake, and the other is all the way over here. I'm going to simply remove those two bolts and set them aside. Next, you can carefully pry away this whole large gray piece from the dash. There is a ring around the keyhole which will fly out as you do this. You can pry it out ahead of time if you'd like, but I prefer not to just because it saves me one step. Just make sure you collect it before it goes missing in your interior somewhere. And there it is. Now you should be able to move this dash piece to the side and using an extension on your 10mm socket, reach another gold colored 10mm bolt, which is hiding right back here. With that bolt removed, we can go ahead and move back inside the vehicle. This next step is where you're probably most likely to damage your interior if you're not careful, but if you take your time and pry around it evenly, you shouldn't have any issues. That's going to be to remove this large trim piece, the actual dash bezel. I like to start on this side. Simply put your hands behind and against the dash and carefully pry until it pops loose somewhere. It popped loose at the bottom first for me. And then keep sort of working your way around a little bit at a time. It should come free. As you try to remove it, the corners are going to kind of fight you coming around here, but you can sort of wiggle things around until it fits. However, before you go removing this, there are 3 more plugs you need to remove, depending on if your vehicle is 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. It may only have 2 plugs. There is one for the hazard light switch on the passenger side, then you have your rear window switch, and your 4-wheel drive knob. Go ahead and unplug those now. Now to get your radio out, there's only 2 more gold colored bolts on either side right here. Then the radio will come out and you can unplug it. From there, if you want to get access to more things, there's a ton of wiring available for you to see here. And if you want to get this entire center console assembly out, you're just 6 bolts away. There are 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, and 2 more inside the center console. With all 4 of those 10mm bolts removed, this entire center console assembly will lift out. Hopefully this video was helpful and can assist you in doing radio installs or other things like that in your 4Runner. Reassembly is simply exactly the opposite of disassembly, so I'm just going to show a time lapse of that now.